Hi there, this is Rebecca,
And I'm Brad.
and we are Friends
Friends
First.
first.
So, today we're discussing roles and how they relate to our friendship and ourselves, our individuality, and our relationship and our love. And we've noticed over the last 6 months to a year that we've gotten really stuck in some of our roles, and to the point where we're not feeling the authentic friendship and the joy and the sort of adventure and discovery that life has to offer as playmates. And so we're going to do a little bit of sharing with you what we're learning about that and what we're putting into practice to make it better. And we really have the desire to be present with each other and to be who we are. And to do that, we must be willing to get out from under the role and to decide how we want to relate with it.
So one way to look at roles is it's like a box that we end up putting ourselves in often, where the role of the parent or the mother, the father, the provider, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, whatever these roles are, the person who cleans the house, the person who brings in the money, the person who fixes the car, these are things that they're useful. You got to do all those things, but when you confine yourself to you're the person who does that, it doesn't necessarily take in the whole of who you are if you live in these roles. It's kind of like a set of clothes that you that never really fit right, and you're just stuffing yourself in there anyway, and you can't like move, and you're stuck, and you can't be like the whole person that you are. And so that's really why it's important for us to look at our roles and which ones we've taken on, and which one what fits and what doesn't, so that we can expand and be full real people, because that's how we're going to have the quality friendship that we're building with each other.
And the freedom we want to experience in our lives beyond those roles. So let me start with an example of probably my biggest example of a huge change in roles was when I became a parent first, when I had my first baby 13 years ago. 14?
13.
Okay.
She's 13.
Oh, goodness. Time flies. So I just remember it was such a contrast from going to feel like from where I could sort of have autonomy over my day and do what I wanted when, and um, not really be accountable to a little person. So that role, I think, was engulfing for me at first. And I think when you have babies, you're breastfeeding a lot. It took a big, um, they say 18 hours for a breastfeeding mom is what to think of in terms of your job at first. But that was just um, really shocking to me. And um, I started immediately feeling like, I don't really have a choice in the matter here. And at the same time, I was in love with my baby. And so I wanted to cuddle and dote on her and nurse her whenever she wanted to be nursed and respond to her whenever she, cooed or made a little cry or anything like that. And so it really, it was hard for me to find self care or genuine moments to take a break or do something different than what my traditional sort of mothering role that I had been learned from a kid would dictate. So I grew up with the Mormon sort of, mothering is perfect and the greatest ideal sort of, but also like you're also the bottom rank at the same time. So June Cleaver, make everyone else happy, put yourself second. And I discovered over time, it became more and more painful when doing that role, that it was like 10% me and 90% of like, what am I doing all day? Do I really enjoy like picking up Legos all day long, or how many things am I going to pick up the floor today, and like, is that like really the best use of like my mind and my like the way I want to enjoy my body and my time and my thinking. I mean, and I said this already, but like so much of my thinking went to like, what are the children needing right now? What's the next meal? What do I need to go grocery shopping? And it's not like I hated any of those things, but to do that like full time, uh, became um, a prison of sorts to me. And I had less like thinking of the things that I really enjoyed. Like I like to read, I like to go outside and garden, I like to spend time hiking around and learning about like the native plants in the area, the mushrooms and the food that can be foraged. And there's a lot of topics of discovery that I enjoy learning about, but I didn't have space and didn't make it important or make space for the things that were also important to me within that role. I allowed myself to get consumed by that role, and over time, it became super wearing and super not fulfilling. And then I'm like sort of this rote June Cleaver trying to make my husband also happy all the time. And in there, it's like I don't even relate to who I am or what I want. And that's extremely painful. And then, of course, not of course, but I found myself getting very resentful to my partner that I love and my best friend that I could sometimes hardly not even find because I was too busy. We were both too busy kind of doing the roles, and short-tempered and exhausted and decision weary, and some of those things that you hear about with mothers. And like now, if I had known myself better at the time, I may not have chosen to have three kids, because some of it I like and some of it is not so much for me. But I didn't know myself that well when I started having kids, and so then it's sort of like the next thing I know, I have got three, and feeling really entrenched and not a lot of awareness of even who I am, what I like, what I don't like, what clothes I like to wear or buy, what books I even used to read or want to read, or um, what what are my dreams, what are my passions. And work was sort of like as I can fit it in based on what the family needs, which is all consuming always anyway. So it's like minimal. And even though I was happy in my work and really enjoyed being in my work, I would never put it first. And that became a sore spot for me as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about, how you interface in the story?
Yes.
It's getting hot in here.
So for me, the also, becoming a parent, it's like I think that's such a great example. And some of you out there who are working on friendship in your relationship, might not be parents yet, but so it's all, it doesn't matter. It's just about roles. But for us, that was such a stark contrast, to become parents, because there you are suddenly with this little person that you have to take care of. And what you saw growing up is like the experience base you have to pull from in a lot of cases. And so for me, like I shared before, if you watched our previous videos, that there wasn't a lot of the kind of the nurturing, and there was almost no like affection, physical touch in my upbringing really at all. And in my household, it's kind of a funny thing when I was reflecting on my role as the dad here, because my dad did, sort of the quote unquote nurturing things in our upbringing, because my mom, well, at a certain point, I think I was 6 or 7, somewhere in there, when my mom started working full time. And so at that point, my dad took over like making dinners and making our lunches and driving us to our sports games and practices and being there for those things and all that kind of stuff that sort of on the surface looks like kind of the nurturing, mothering role to some extent. And my mom was always working. She worked long hours and she worked far away. And so she didn't do a lot of that stuff. But really, while my dad sort of filled in on those like the superficial type of stuff, nobody filled in that role, or nobody took up that role in terms of my parents, of that nurturing and that caring and that physical touch and all of these types of things. So when I stepped into that role of being a dad, I followed suit. And I was willing to do the different things, like make the meals and change the diapers and put together the crib or whatever, all of those sort of superficial things, to like make things function. But I wasn't there in terms of the emotional and the physical, the touch and the nurturing, and in terms of with the kids. And then how that outplayed in our relationship too is not being someone who would compliment really Rebecca ever, or acknowledge her for the who she is and what she was up to. And so in terms of sort of the interplay, when she was describing,
Mm-hmm.
being stuck in that mothering role and starting to get short tempered and not being satisfied with those things. It's like part of what I saw and was given was, my mom kind of ruled the roost in a sense of my dad's job, in addition to those surface things, was to kind of, try to make sure my mom didn't get upset. And so, if Rebecca was reaching a boiling point with some of these ways that the roles didn't fit and would start to get short tempered or different stuff like that, I would often be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I gotta either try to fix it by either like saying I'll do things or agreeing to stuff that I never really intended to do, just to kind of like try to ease things, or retreating more and kind of just going passive and letting her, interface with the kids more and take that up. And so that was the role that I had constructed for myself, was like the dad who was sort of absent, not really there, was willing to do sort of the functional things, and then go to work and that type of stuff, but not be really, not like what I confined myself to was that. And so I wasn't allowing the whole of me, who really is, someone who is affectionate and likes physical touch and likes to compliment people and that type of stuff. Like I wasn't letting that out at all
Right.
in that role. And so that was like how I had boxed myself into that role.
Right. And then naturally, if the kids were feeling like that, I would be a warm embrace. When they needed comfort, they got selectively trained to just come to me a lot of the time. So even if he would have had an inclination to nurture, it got directed towards me, partly by all the time I was spending with them, and my training to be the nurturer, and his tendency and his, in his programming, to stand back a little bit. So you can see how those systems sort of become cyclical and really challenging. And that's what happened for us to a certain degree until we, one of the things that's important, um, that I figured out is, I have to be responsible for what I need. And so that's being honest, that's being, making space for my body and my realness in different moments, and thinking outside the box. Because, for example, if I don't like making the lunches every day, then maybe I need to. I mean, I could ask him to do it, sure, but maybe it doesn't fit for him to do it. So then, what do we do with that problem? Um, but I can't just pretend like that it's okay for me to make the lunches every single day if I can't. If it's like I can't make another lunch. I just remember when we used to pack a lunch every day. Now it's different times, but we used to pack a lunch every day, and then it was like, oh, and not another lunch. You guys can probably relate if you have kids. But things sort of like that, like, oh no, stepping on Legos again, that hurts. Like it really, you know um, but it's not going to change unless I make it change, in other words. And it's not that gonna get it's not going to get better if I just leave it. It's going to get worse, and I've discovered that over the years. And um, and so I have to really own what's up for me in terms of that. Like, I have to own that my work is important, and it can't be placed low on the totem pole in terms of my priorities. It has to be like pretty high on that totem pole. My alone time is paramount. I cannot miss it, or I will become a brat, and quickly. I'll become short tempered and blame other people for what's going on. I will um, just, I don't know, be ordering and pushing with each person in my family. Like, you need to do this, you need to do that, and that's exhausting as well, and nobody likes that. So, I have to find all these places and really um, be responsible to my own body and what works, and my own body in the moment. Like, be present with, okay, this, I'm hurting right now, I can't do another dish, so what can we do about that? But just bring that to the table as a starting place. And it doesn't get perfect immediately, but it does start to get better once we can at least say, once I started saying, this doesn't work, what can I do instead? Or this does work, then I need to not let other things get in the way of it, even if I have to, like, let things kind of fall apart at moments, and not be perfect all the time, not be June Cleaver, miss a lunch, make a crappy dinner. Like, those things happen more, and but there's also more fun and joy in our day to day.
Yeah,
So, you want to share what your practice is?
totally.
Yeah.
So, for me, to like, I think that what I want to say also in listening to you is that the how this affects, because obviously we're talking a lot about being parents and how we relate to our kids, but that the more we shoved ourselves into these boxes, the further we were away from being real people together, and the more that ate at our friendship.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're uncovering now. We're discovering like what fits, what doesn't. How do we bust out of these roles and really come to the table as full real people?
Right.
And in terms of with what I was describing, with the way I had created that role as a dad, my practice, what I'm up to really bust out of that and to explore more, like the more wholeness of who I am, is really like a concerted or specific practice of a couple things. One is giving compliments uh, regularly, every day, multiple times a day. I actually have a little alarm on my phone, believe it or not, that goes off 3 times a day that says compliment, because it's so unnatural to me. Like, I don't just, it doesn't just, I mean, it's coming more natural, but still, I've been doing it for a few months and it's still not that natural. I still need that prompt, that reminder, because it's really what I'm up to and what I'm wanting to
Mm-hmm.
do. And it just doesn't occur to me naturally yet. And in the complimenting is also acknowledgement. Rebecca is a big one, because that
Right.
she's my wife, my my main person, but throughout every relationship I have as well too. And then also to specifically practice physical affection, physical touch with my kids, as a lot of it, because that's like where I was really sort of hands off, and um, had built this role of being more hands off and not doing that, and with Rebecca as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just to touch, to hug, to tickle, to just put your arm around someone, and one of them, and do that. And so these are the things that I'm putting in place and have been putting in place for a little while now, to really bust out of that role and that box that I had created for myself, and it's working. And I got ways to go. It's like I didn't get any of that, but that's okay, because all of those things, when I do them, they actually are pretty nice, to like hug somebody, or to that you love, or to compliment somebody that you care about. I mean, those are great things. And so it's I'm just doing enough rounds of practice to instill that in my awareness as like a normal thing that I just do.
Right. So, in wrapping it up, we need to just, we want to iterate. What? How do you use that word?
Reiterate.
Reiterate. Yes. Let's iterate and iterate again that the role isn't us, and we need to uh, understand that the role is serving us. It's a purpose. It serves a purpose we want, and we can hold that purpose and not get stuck and confused in that role and think that we aren't beyond more than that role. Um, we can again, what am I going to say? So we can get creative. We can think outside the box. We can at least own, hey, this role isn't feeling well right now. I don't like clothes feel too tight, or um, what if we swap? Let's think of ways to change it up. And I think all of us need to be looking at those things. But it's been helpful so far, and there's lots of different rules we're looking at, not just this one that we shared about today. And I'm sure we'll share more over time.
Yeah,
But
for sure. Yeah, I mean, we want to be able to be whole people, because like we're like the whole point of this journey we're on of Friends First is really coming to the table as whole people, being honest, being upfront, being real
mm-hmm.
with each other, and building a friendship out of that. And so part of that journey is being learning how to be more of that ourselves, in all the places we do that in our lives.
Right.
So we appreciate you watching today. Remember to subscribe
Right.
to our channel, hit that thumbs up button, comment. We'd love to hear what challenges you've noticed with roles, what things you're putting in place, any kind of interactivity like that, questions, comments, all that kind of stuff. We love that. So happy to put that in below. We'll be watching that and responding to you guys.
Right. So just remember, the more realness that we can bring to the world, the better, and that our voices are important. And we're friends
Friends
first.
first. See ya.
Bye.